All right, good afternoon and welcome to the second webinar in the Farmer-Led Webinar Series that's hosted by DATCAP, UW Discovery Farms, and UW Division of Extension. Our webinar series is focused on planting new ideas and growing conservation within the producer-led network. I'm Rachel Rushman and I'm the program manager for the producer-led program at DATCAP. We also have on the call Dana Crystal, who is another vital part of the producer-led program. We have Erica Olson on the line with UW Discovery Farms, and she is facilitating the webinar today. And then her and myself will be helping facilitate any questions at the end. So we're really excited to partner with both Discovery Farms and Extension on this webinar series. We're really hoping that this will lead to one-on-one conversations with farmers about specific conservation practices, and that is intended to facilitate farmer-to-farmer exchange regarding these practices and also producer group related efforts. We will be posting recordings, notes, and photos to the producer-led webinar webpage, and you should be able to see that on the screen there. And also, if you Google producer-led webinar, you should easily be able to find the webinar page that way too. The information collected from these webinars to help facilitate more conversations on conservation and to help share lessons learned across the producer-led network. This information is also going to be used to help evaluate our program. This webinar will be focused on planting corn into standing rye with Tony Peirick from the Dodge County Producer-Led Group. Our webinar series is now going to be held on the second Tuesday of every month at noon. So hopefully that'll be easier to remember, and we'll be sending out reminders for those dates. To sign up for the webinar series, again, that's you can get to that link that you can see on the page there. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to myself. My email is rachel.rushman@wisconsin.gov. You can reach out to Erica Olson, and her email is erica.olson@wis.edu. One quick note I want to mention before I hand it off to Erica regarding the producer-led program. Some of you have contacted us regarding possible grant budget changes due to canceled events related to the COVID-19 restrictions. If you do need to cancel an event or a deliverable related to your producer-led grant, please just submit a revised budget to myself, and then Susan Mockert and I will look at that budget and how you're hoping to reallocate the funds, and then we'll review it for approval. So again, if you do need to cancel an event, it's nothing to worry about. You can reallocate the funds in your budget. Just submit a revised budget to myself and we'll review it for approval. So with that, I will turn it over to Erica to get the webinar started.
Thanks, Rachel. Sorry. I was just unmuting myself. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for registering for the producer-led webinar series. My name is Erica Olson, and I work for the Discovery Farms program, which is part of the Division of Extension. And we are a farmer-led research and outreach organization. So this webinar today, as Rachel mentioned, is going to be talking about planting corn into standing rye. And we will have Tony Peirick with us, who is a farmer in Dodge County. He's part of the Dodge County Farmers for Healthy Soils and Healthy Waters. And interviewing him will be Jared Winter from the Dodge County Land and Water Conservation Department. A couple housekeeping items. If you have questions as we go throughout the webinar, you can feel free to type them into the chat box, and we will facilitate those as they come up and make sure Tony and Jared get to see them. Also, if you've signed up for the webinar series, we're doing kind of a rolling sign up. So if you've signed up for one, you will receive the links to the monthly webinars. So we encourage you to pay attention to your email and get those alerts for when the next webinar is. and we hope that you can join as many as possible. But if you do miss the live version, as Rachel mentioned, the audio and pictures will be posted on the DATCAP website. So I will invite Jared to go ahead and share his screen now, and we will get started.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, can you unmute Tony, please? So we'll go do this through his device.
Thank you. So to get started here, Tony, you and I, we know each other, and I've been on your farm a number of times. But for maybe some of the people who are tuning in today, who may not know you quite as well, could you briefly describe kind of what TNR Dairy is about, please?
Okay, I'll introduce myself. My name is Tony Peirick. I'm from the Dodge County Group. I live in southern part of Dodge County. I farm with my brother Ralph, and our sons and our families are involved. It's a family operation. We run around 1,100 acres. We're a dairy. We got about 200 cows milking in the dairy, 1,100 acres. We do a lot of cash cropping. We do custom planting, combining, spraying, and for other dairies in our areas, farmers in the area. And like I say, we do have cash grain, and we do keep that on farm too.
All right, so now, Tony, I want to jump kind of right into the topic of the day and ask you how you first heard about planting green and why did you start doing it? Essentially, what was that motivation for you?
Well, we got started in planting green way back in a watershed project in the 90s, and that required us to put covers on corn silage. And at the time, it was new in the 90s yet, and not a lot of people were doing that. And we got started with oats, and then we got some cereal rye, and with our private crop consultant, got us going on to planting soybeans into the green cereal rye in the spring, and it worked out really good. And as time progressed over the 90s, it was working good, and then we got into 2000s, and everything was working really good. So then all of a sudden decided that why wouldn't it also work in corn? And I finally, 5 years ago, I started planting the corn into it, and just looking at soil health and what living roots in soil and how they share nutrients. And if you plant something into it, another root will always share the nutrients and get it going. So it was always in the back of my mind that it would be a good idea to try the corn. Awesome.
Okay, and so how many acres do you plant green on currently?
Currently, we're trying to get 100% pretty well. Last year, we got pretty close to it. Now this year, we didn't get a lot of cereal rye planted, so I won't have it. But we're trying to shoot for almost everything planting green.
Okay, so now obviously, you know, TNR Dairy, being a dairy, I wanted to ask, how does planting green fit into the dairy side of your operation?
Well, it fits in really good. We don't use the cereal rye. We could, but we don't need it. We got enough acres for forage in the spring, so usually we'll just let it grow and plant into it. But it makes it so much easier for getting the crops in with the dairy. We're busy with a dairy herd milking and that, and for planting green, you don't have to worry about getting the tillage done ahead of me as we plant, and we can just go out and plant every day and not worry about trying to get your ground worked up ahead of the planting schedule.
So Tony, I want to move now into how you actually go about planting green, and start off by asking you what your seeding rate of rye is in the fall.
Well, usually in the fall, we've got a 30-foot Great Plains no-till drill. We try to get cover and try to get our cereal rye planted in the fall behind everything. As soon as you get your crops off, or if we do have cereal rye planted in the over winter for seed, we try to keep some cereal rye back for seed always for harvesting. We'll put a 5-way mix or more into that earlier in July or late July, August. But usually it's right after corn silage. You start drilling right away after the beans and after the combining corn for grain. So it's usually about 50 pounds to an acre we've been always going at. It seems to be pretty in that ballpark, so it works out real good.
Okay, and like you mentioned, use that cereal rye to plant green now. But have you ever tried using any other species of cover crop, or even perhaps a cover crop mix to plant green, or is that something on your radar for the future?
Yeah, we'd like to try to. I was going to try to put some peas in there, winter peas with cereal rye this last year, but it got late. If we can get it in a little earlier, we can try to put a couple other crops or a couple other varieties in within the fall. But if we can get something planted into that early August time frame, you can put these 5-10 way mixes or more, and then try to carry some of the either the annual or some of the ryegrass over for next year, have some kind of coming up green next, in the spring.
And so how does planting green affect your herbicide program?
Well, the herbicide program, it actually seemed to be a lot less weed pressures we've noticed over the years. Last couple of years, we have very little water hemp in our beans, practically none. And with the herbicide program, we can able to, by planting green, we always will be doing the burn down after planting. So you got a week or so after planting, and then you can come in with your Roundup and do the burn down. And with cereal rye out there, it's a good weed deterrent. It's a really unbelievable how much you can get the suppression on weeds with cereal rye.
So now on this next question, we're obviously just looking into planting corn green perhaps, but how has your nitrogen program changed on your planting green acres? Has it really changed at all for you?
Well, we're at about a 0.6 unit of nitrogen per bushel. So it's what you do when you're planting into cereal rye, especially the corn. Cereal rye is a very good scavenger of nitrogen. It's for overwintering. It can scavenge the nitrogen, hold it, and keep it in the plant. So you don't have the nitrogen there, and it looks like a heliopathic effect. Some claim it is or isn't, but it's more the nitrogen deficiency you're seeing. So what we do, we put about 20 gallons of 28 or 32% on it planting with the starter, and you just move your rates you use the same rate basically, but you just move it up some with planting, and then you do the side dressing later at B5, B6 or something, wherever you're at. So you really don't change your rate of nitrogen. You just got to move it up earlier so the plant's got it available. So after the cereal rye, when it decomposes, we're looking at giving nitrogen back to the corn later in the season.
Okay. So then what kind of equipment are you running to actually plant your rye in the fall?
Well, like I say, we're running, got on a 30-foot Great Plains drill. There's a lot of these older drills out there. It's a really good no-till drill. And mainly just drilling it. And like this last year, we didn't get much planted, so we broadcast a few hundred acres with the fertilizer spreader. And we'll do whatever we can to get it in the ground. But usually we do try to drill it as soon as possible right after harvest.
Okay, and so if you are drilling, is seeding depth, either with your rye in the fall or maybe even with your corn or beans in the spring, a major consideration for you?
As means planting corn into that cereal rye.
Sure, yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah, the planting depth is pretty important because when you're planting the cereal rye, you've got a major root mass underground. If you take a shovel out there, you'll see the massive root structure that goes in the ground with cereal rye. Because you may have a couple inches of cereal rye on the surface, but you'll have massive amount of roots in the ground. So I found over the years you needed that 2 inches or more in the ground. You got to get it down the ground to get it down into those roots or lower into the roots where there's moisture, because the top will stay drier with the cereal rye roots being on there, growing.
Okay, so taking into account that price of the rye seed itself and also to plant that seed, what would you say is the cost associated with planting green for you?
Well, you're saving the tillage strips, so you aren't doing any tillage in the fall. And if you're doing your no-till planting, you can, any range from $15 to $20 an acre maybe to plant that or whatever, and then you can maybe figure 20 with the seed or something. So it's whatever it costs, you can get the seed for the cereal rye in the fall. And but it's usually, like I say, you're saving all this tillage passes, and you're saving your soil structure and your microbes and your soil biology.
Okay, so now, Tony, this next question might seem a bit silly considering all we've talked about thus far, but do you continue to plant green in the future?
Oh, yes, definitely. We planted green. And then this last year, as you see in the slide, that we planted into headed out cereal rye, and mainly, this last year we had to be planted into June. And normally, if you are going to need a normal year planting, you may only have a couple foot high cereal rye, and you don't have that option to go and let it go to seed or go to head pieces so you can roll it. But this year we planted quite a bit into the 5 to 6 foot tall cereal rye, and it worked out really good. It was really amazing how well you can plant into that. But no, we'll continue, because it's just amazing how much easier it is to do your planting when you got that cereal rye growing in your field.
And so now, looking at where you are now and where you were when you planted that first field green, what has changed for you? How have you altered the way you do this practice to make it work for you? And are you continuing to make changes even now?
Well, there's some changes over the years, but it seems once you get doing this, it's kind of a simple practice. It isn't hard. Like I say, it's just a matter of when your crops are harvested, get out there and drill it in one way or the other, and just get this cereal rye, growing for you. And it's made so much easier farming, and especially growing your crops. You're not dealing with that soil that's wet or sticky or muddy. The cereal rye is unbelievable how well that can support a tractor and support your tires and get better soil structure.
Okay, so now Tony, we've talked a little bit about the economics of planting green, but I also want to ask you kind of what sort of benefits has planting green provided to the health of your soil that you've been able to observe on your farm?
Well, for one thing, definitely you're going to see the earthworms, soil biology, your soil structure, all your beneficials are going to start coming back because there's that mat out there, or your organic matter on your surface that all creatures like, and your earthworms really love, and they love to be underneath there. And you're feeding the biology of your soil continuously. Once you do any tillage, destroy that. There's nothing out there for any of the worms or your biology to live off of. So it's very important that we don't disturb the soil.
Does water infiltration increase when you do this, or is water infiltration benefited by doing this practice at all?
Oh yes, definitely. We just seen there's just no erosion anymore. We've completely eliminated erosion almost everywhere. It's just amazing how you can control. There's no runoff because it's infiltrating. It's not running off. So it's made a major impact.
Okay, now Tony, during some of my visits out to your farm over the years, I have been able to witness some pretty impressive mats of cereal rye that have sat between your corn and bean rows. But seeing that, I do have to wonder, does that heavy mat of rye ever affect your harvest or yields at all?
No, like I say, this was actually the first year we were able to plant in the 5 to 6 foot cereal rye. It was massive, it was tall, and we got it rolled down on its surface, but everything, once the corn grows through it, it's just amazing that mat underneath there can hold moisture. And even last year, being as wet as it was, I thought, oh no, maybe it's going to be too wet underneath there. It's not true. It's amazing. The earthworms, the castings underneath there, the earthworm activity is underneath that mat. It's completely opposite what a person would think, that it would be detrimental for your cropping system.
So Tony, all I'm hearing from you right now are benefits and upsides and advantages of actually doing this planting green. But what sort of challenges or maybe even failures have you encountered during your time of planting green?
I haven't really had any failure, which was kind of interesting because I get that question asked a lot, and it's kind of forgiving in a way. It's just that you do have to get your cereal rye down on the ground if it gets over 2 to 3 feet tall at that point, because it'll shade your corn growing up, and a lot of them have done this practice. They kind of notice that it's kind of weak. The corn's got to get up to get sunlight, so if you can get that cereal rye down or on the ground, normally at a couple feet tall, it'll decay and the leaves will fall off and your corn will come right straight through it. But otherwise, it's amazing the simplicity of planting green, and why more people don't do it. It's kind of a fault, not really a 100% fail-proof system, but it gives you a lot of leeway of getting the crop in the ground.
So you've never had a failure, and really your challenges have been sparse at best. Given that, I have to ask, in order to have such consistent success, you mentioned how it's kind of forgiving practice, but have you ever sought the advice of other farmers or perhaps an agronomist, someone at a co-op, conservation agent, anyone?
Well, usually, yeah, our private crop consultants helped a lot over the years in that, but like I say, this was all new over the last years, and it was hard. I've been doing this for over 5 years now on the corn silage end of it, or on the corn ground, I should say. But there's not a lot of information out there. Everybody's kind of learning this. This whole soil health is a complete new movement, and I think it's really moving forward. But this planting green and using cereal rye is kind of a simple practice that a lot of them start in, and then you move forward from there. So it's a good practice.
Okay. So now, Tony, you're the president of the Dodge County Farmers for Healthy Soil, Healthy Water group here, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But when you look at all the other members of the group, and maybe even people outside the group, are you seeing anyone who has actually adopted this practice on their farm?
Oh yeah, we're having a lot of our members, which is nice about these watershed groups or soil health groups
Mhm.
that we can share experience. I get calls from everybody. We got a lot of these, our farmers now in our group doing, a lot of big grain farmers are doing this, and it's just, everybody's afraid to do something on their own when we got the support of our other members. And you can call them up and say, hey, can I do this? And will this work? And they need that little bit of assurance to go ahead and do it.
Right. So now, Tony, you and I have worked together a few times on the topic of trying to get farmers to adopt more of these soil health practices like planting green. Yet, I'm sure you've seen this too, that we see some guys who are just unwilling to change, or maybe who even haven't taken that first step yet. What do you think is the biggest barrier keeping farmers from adopting not just planting green, but really any conservation practice? And how are farmers supposed to overcome such a roadblock?
Well, it's a simple explanation of that. It's between your two ears. It seems that everybody's just, I've talked to a lot of different groups and other farmers, and it's just a mindset. They don't want to disturb what they've been doing over the years. We need change out there, and it needs to come, especially now. And it's just a change that farmers got to be willing to do. It's just something that it's hard. There's a lot of farmers just are not willing to do a change.
Now, Tony, let's say you have a farmer who's in front of you who maybe does some cover crops and some no-tills, but really who is willing to take that next step to go into planting green, but didn't know how. What advice would you give that farmer?
Well, it's very simple. If you want to start and you're afraid, the planting your soybeans in the cereal rye is very, very simple and very basic, because, it doesn't need the nitrogen, and you can get away with that. That was what we did the first, years back in the late 90s and everything. So, but it's kind of a very simple practice. So if you're comfortable with that, I know the corn, it gets into that was a whole another step, but you got to add that extra nitrogen. You got to be willing to get your planter set up right for it and make sure it goes through it. But the start always just get some cereal rye planted in the fall. You got drills. We've got another in our group. We've got a member that just takes an old John Deere FB drill and goes out in his field. And if you go slow and you just get it in the ground a little bit, you don't have to be spending all this expensive money on machinery. If you got something out there, use it.
And so you're saying, corn might have an extra step or two. So maybe if somebody's doing planting green, maybe start with planting soybeans into it, perhaps?
Yes. That would be, you're more comfortable. That's probably pretty well foolproof, because it works really good for soybeans.
Okay. Well, Tony, thank you for taking,
Can we take a couple questions from the chat?
Yep, I was just going to pass it off to you to see if we have any more questions from the audience, because that's what I had for planting green. So yeah, absolutely, fire away.
Perfect. Tony, can you speak to your nitrogen program? How do you feed your corn planting green?
Okay, we're at when I plant, we're using the extra 20 gallons of 32 or 28%, whatever you have, with your actual. I use molasses. It's from QLF. It's from Midwest BioAg. It's a molasses base starter, and I use that at 5 gallons, and then I add the 20 gallons of the 32 or 28% at 2x2 at planting, and that helps get the plant out of the ground. And then after a while, I'll side dress application at V4, V5 corn, or later, whenever I can get through. So it's just basically you're just moving your nitrogen from the later planting, or if you bulk spread it early, you could do that too also. But it's just a matter of, you need that extra nitrogen up front early on. That's what we noticed, because the corn will look really yellow. The corn will have a tendency to not look as nice as the neighbors that did all this tillage early on, but once it gets going in the summer, it walks all over it.
Have you found that there is more residual nitrogen in the soil as a function of the cereal rye?
Yeah, well, we're going to do more testing on. Like I say, all this stuff we need to do a lot of testing on, and I definitely, in some of the pictures I've had and at the corn we had this year, our corn will stay greener after August and everything than a lot of the neighbors do that are doing the tillage, because I think our cereal rye is decomposing, it's giving back the nitrogen, and corn is really seeming green all the way down to the bottom. It's just very noticeable. And even at our August event we had at our farm, you could see the corn, how green it was all the way down in late August.
And then, do you have any trouble with rye wrapping on the coulters when you're planting?
No, the planter we had, I even had Rick Smith from Dan Smith from the university out there. So they did a lot of filming on that tall cereal rye, And it seems like some of the row cleaners will wrap, and I've been working on my planter this year. We have the Martins, and they do have a wiper that goes on back of those fingers on the back side of the row cleaners. And I think that helps us to not have it wrap on the row cleaners. I've had other people talk about they have to take the row cleaners off because it will wrap. And I think our advantage with ours, I was able to do that, is I got these wipers on the back. They're Martins. They do have, you got a special wiper you bolt on the back. It kind of pushes the stuff off the fingers so it don't wrap. So you may have some trouble, but if you do have the trouble with that, you usually just keep your row cleaners up or don't use the row cleaners. Usually you can get through it pretty easy because the ground will start mellowing out. You just may have to drive a little slower, get extra down pressure. But the main thing is just getting the corn seed in the ground at 2 inches plus, 2.5.
And then Tony, this is related. Did you change out closing wheels between planting into 1 foot rye versus 5 foot rye? And did you have any wrapping problems?
No, we're using the furrow cruisers, the copperhead furrow cruisers, those little rubber spike ones. We've never changed the closing and back. We've gone from basically short cereal rye to that 5-6 foot cereal rye this year. We planted, it was a couple hundred acres that was planted with. We had no wrapping whatsoever. I went through that field, the videos I've been taking, and like I say, Dan Smith got from university. He couldn't believe it either, what we were doing out there, just going through everything. The only bad thing about planting tall cereal rye is the animals out there. You may run over a deer or two. We were chasing deer all day out in that field, and the deer are literally all over in the field in that tall cereal rye when we were planting this year.
So why did you use the cereal rye instead of winter rye?
The cereal rye is the one that's used for overwintering. There is an annual rye and other ryes. I don't quite get what exactly you want to ask on that question, but the cereal rye is the one that you want to use. It's more of a very winter hardiness, and that's the one you want to use for over the winter.
Perfect. And have you considered, one second, let's just move on me. Have you considered crimping the rye instead of burning down with the herbicide as organic growers do?
Yes, I did at the farm there, and that I did. We had to roll that. I did try a little bit of it this last year. I didn't have a roller crimper. It didn't get it down right away. I left the strip and didn't use the Roundup on it after it was rolled. I did come back later, a week or two later, and I did roll it, or spray the rest of it that I did roll. I think if you get a good roller crimper, you can probably get it crimped down in that. The field I did it on, I was hauling liquid manure on it and before I planted it. So I had the wheel track that knocked them down. So it didn't all kill properly, but it will work if you get the right roller, and at thesis time, it will kill it off, and you may have to use any chemical. But it doesn't kill. Like I say, it's not hard to kill cereal rye. It's very, very easy. I use the basic rate of Roundup. I don't over apply Roundup at all, and people say that it's harder to kill the cereal rye. I have not had that problem with some Roundup on it. Usually, there's no problem at all.
Okay. And then besides the deer, do you get pest problems, and how do you deal with them?
What was that question?
So do you get pest problems, and how do you deal with them?
Pest problems, not really. It's just, it seems the longer you go into it, we did have some, on another farm I planted for a little problem. We had to spray some insecticide one year, but it seems like the longer you get involved with this, the beneficials are there. You don't have a lot of problem with pests and that. It's amazing to see your soil as it turns and as the cereal rye is out there. I don't have very, very little problems with that. I haven't really sprayed it for anything over the years.
Okay. And then do you roll the cereal rye when it is over 2 feet tall?
Yeah, my practice will be if it gets a little taller than that. It'll depend on what you're looking at and everything. You can keep an eye on it. But when I rolled mine this year, I just took our color mulcher out there. That's all we had, and I rolled it down. The corn was already about 2 leaves out of the ground, so I could see the rows, and I didn't do any damage to it. I got it rolled down quick, and it was just the timing that was there because it was too wet earlier, and it was just going to rain the next day. So I didn't hurt the corn any, but I got it down on the ground. Just you got to get it down on the ground so you can get that sunlight to the corn leaves.
Tony, if the weather continues to be extreme like we've seen in the fall, do you have any tips for farmers on covering their acres with cereal rye after harvest?
Well, it seemed like this year, I know some of that with the broadcasting, a person maybe should have been out. I know guys are putting broadcasting right on the corn head of a combine and broadcast underneath for the residue hitting the ground. You can try to get it out there with broadcasting, you know, earlier the better. It seems the catching pretty good. We'll see how well the broadcast did this year. Last year, my broadcasting, I had maybe 50% catch. It was there. I was satisfied with it, but it depends when you put it on the broadcast and how much rain you get on it. And then also, Ed, if you do get a dry year, let's say it's just bone dry right away at planting, you may want to kill your cereal rye off, you know, maybe before you plant, you know, because it will absorb a lot of the moisture, cereal rye, and you gotta manage it. You just can't let it go sometimes. And then if it's a wet year, you can let it grow longer, and you can absorb the moisture, and it will draw the moisture out of the ground and be able to plant sooner.
Yeah. Back to when you rolled it down. Can you describe how you rolled it down? What type of implement you used?
Yeah, we've had a brilliant column mulcher, and I used that, and it got it down okay. Like I say, our group, we're hoping to get funding, but it'd be nice to get a roller crimper. I had a lot of calls last year and have one, but a column mulcher works. I've seen guys with these roller baskets on the back of your tillage equipment. You pull these, you know, the DMI roller basket or something like that. That does work. Anything just to get it down. If you're going to spray the Roundup on it, it usually will kill it. You know, the true rolling cereal rye is you want to do that roller crimper to crimp it to kill it. Then you don't use any, you know, herbicide. But the other way, if you're just trying to get it down on the ground, use anything you got as far as you know, some kind of a roller, any kind of a basket roller, or whatever you have.
Yeah. And then, does your 0.6 pounds of nitrogen per bushel of corn include N from manure, or just the N that you applied from planter and side dress?
We go, it's all considered. If we haul manure on it, we're analyzed, the manure is analyzed, and it's all, our crop consultant's got it all figured back. We take in consideration everything we have out there. We're not over applying nitrogen. I did tests over the years for the nitrogen study, and we found out that there's a lot of over applying nitrogen. We can get by with less than what everybody thinks. So, and now with the soil health and having living roots in the ground, I think we're going to find out that we can able to tap into a lot of that available nitrogen that we weren't able to get before.
Yeah. And then Tony, what type of cereal rye are you using? What variety?
That's a good question. I've had it for so many years. I got some way back when I first started. We constantly keep planting it and constantly keep harvesting it. The cereal rye is you can just keep harvesting and, you know, keep reusing it. It doesn't seem to wear out. I know they're working on some newer, different varieties of cereal rye, you know, now, but I just been replanting and using it year after year after year, and it seems to be for cover seem pretty good. I couldn't tell you what variety it is. It's been so long, I really didn't know.
Yeah. Looks like we have 3 more questions in the chat. We'll get through those and then we'll go on to the next part. So next question, how do you get the point across to farmers who say their soil is too heavy and wet for cover crops?
Yeah, I hear that all the time. There isn't any soil out there that I've seen that you can't use cereal rye and benefit from it. All these questions, everybody tries to come up with an excuse that it doesn't work on their farm, and there is no excuses out there. Soil is soil no matter what kind of soil you got. And wet or dry or whatever, it doesn't make any difference. It's always that everybody's got an excuse that our soil is too wet or something for this. It's just amazing. As I plant this over the years, we got some blue clay, and it's just amazing having that cereal rye in that blue clay. The difference the soil has been, it's just almost like powder planting into it. Before, when you tried to work blue clay soil, if you didn't, it just is a terrible mess out there. But there isn't anything that doesn't, I mean, cereal rye will work in any kind of soil. I don't care what you got, how wet or dry or whatever, it'll work all over.
All right, so then do you look for specific traits for your corn varieties that you plant to be able to handle the planting green?
As of now, no, we haven't really looked in any different certain varieties or something. You don't have to change a lot. You're not really altering plant or growing season. You may have to alter if you get into 60-inch corn and other stuff, which we've been playing around with. But as far as your variety and what you're looking for, it's not necessary to change anything. Just go and plant the cereal rye and plant your corn into it. You don't change anything really.
All right, you kind of already answered this regarding, that you can use cereal rye on a lot of different types of soils, but do you think it makes a difference what type of soil you have as far as what success you would get with planting green?
I don't think there's any soil would be any different, because if you got to look at your soil when you get involved with cereal rye, the massive root structure that goes underground with cereal rye, nobody realizes that until you grow it and take a shovel out there or do a soil pit. It's such a fibrous, hairy root system underground that it just encompasses any kind of soil and makes it looser or more drainable, or it's completely. I don't think there's a soil out there that it would change. I mean, it would not work on, because the massive root system that cereal rye has.
Great, thank you.
All right, do you want us to continue on here then?
Yeah, you can go ahead with the next set of questions.
All right, so we'll kind of go through these a little quickly here, so we have some time maybe for some questions at the end. But Tony, I wanted to kind of transition to the next part of our interview today, in which we're talking about the Dodge County farmers for healthy soil, healthy water. And my first question in that category is, how did this group form here in Dodge? And maybe piggybacking off of that, what are some of the issues that you face here in Dodge County?
Well, our group formed about almost 5 years ago now, and in our county we've got 3 major lakes, pretty good lakes. And at that time, about 5 years ago, lake associations were concerned about their runoff and phosphorus in their lakes, and they were trying to protect themselves too. They wanted to mandate a buffer ordinance in all drainage into their lakes. And at the time, our county board shot it down and said, well, we got to come up with a better solution than this. So I was involved with some other farmers, and we sat down as a group for a year with the DNR, land conservation, NRCS, lake associations, land and water, fish, all different groups, and met for about a year trying to come up with a solution. So at that time, I got to give some shout out to Rick Jorgensen up there at Pentonwell, Castle Rock. They had Ray Archuleta come and speaking up there in 2016, I think it was, in the spring. And they put this meeting together up there about their farmer-led group, or a group they were starting up. And I'd seen it up there and went to it, and very impressed on what they did and what was going on. And then after we came up with solutions in our group to go ahead and just do some implementation, I asked if I could go ahead and start a group up here in Dodge County. So that's how our group kind of started, and we got going from there. So help the soil. So.
Okay, and so a simple question here for you, Tony. How do you define a successful producer-led group?
Well, that is interesting, because at the time I was excited about starting it. I just went ahead and with the help of our county ag agent that was there at the time, she helped quite a bit, Loretta, and we decided to get a group going. I felt the only way anybody's going to know how to get a group going was to put their first meeting together. And we had Ray Archuleta come, and I was hoping for 50, and we got almost 300, 250 or more people showed up. So explain what we were trying to do and what everybody's involved with soil health, because it's been kind of new over the last 5 years. So, but we had good participation. I mean, I gotta give a shout out to all our group, all the members in Dodge County, all the farmers I met. They're all willing to do something, and we got a really good group of farmers in Dodge County that are willing to sit down and listen and maybe work together and come up with some solutions.
Okay, so Tony, if you could share with another group why Healthy Soil, Healthy Water is successful, what would you tell them? Essentially, what has been your group's greatest success?
Well, the group's greatest success is our alliance. That was the group we met 5 years ago with the DNR, NRCS, and Lake Association, and DATCAP, and everybody's been sitting down at the table with us. And, coming up with solutions and helping us out and working on problems that's out there and giving us support. And it just takes a group effort. It's not just one person. I got this group going, yeah, but it's a group effort. It's our whole group. It's all the farmers involved with this, and everybody, it's a DNR to our whole state organizations to anything, DATCAP, to Discovery Farms. We've involved Discovery Farms for a long time with them, and it's just all the groups together are really helping.
So, pardon me if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost sounds like, communication and networking is pretty vital when you have a farmer-led group here.
Oh yes, definitely. The communication's very important. Keep up. We try to have some farm meetings. I know this last year has been kind of hard to get some farm meetings together and sit down at people's shop and talk stuff over. And every farmer likes to show what they're doing, which is always nice to see how they're doing with this soil health and their cover crops and that. But it's a sharing of your information and talking to farmers and sitting down with other farmers.
Okay, so on that topic of success then, your group promotes obviously a wide variety of soil health practices, which includes the planting green that we just got done discussing. But how do you know if a conservation practice is going to be successful?
It depends. It's on that participation with your group and everything. And you do it and you get questions, you get other farmers trying it, and everybody, once it gets going, it seems that you got to have the support out there, and the group meetings is always helpful. You're always kind of skeptical on doing it, but it's just a group effort out there to do this, I think.
Okay, and so Tony, besides planting green, which we discussed, there are a few members of the group who are trying, what other practices seem to work well within the group?
Well, we got a practice as far as we've got a CCIP program, cover crop incentive program. We've got other programs to try to get farmers to go initiate and start some soil health. And we have usually 4 annual events a year. We try to get a spring or annual event in February, one in spring, and then one in fall. And we try to participate in the Dodge County fair time. And then and to have a harvest meeting or late in the fall. And we also work a lot with the lake associations. They've been working with us. They've been supporting us, and we have cover crop field days. We show them what we're doing, and just get the word out and share the knowledge with other farmers.
So that kind of seems to answer my question of why those practices work well then within the group, and also kind of talk about sharing an example of how these practices sort of developed and spread throughout the county. But can you go into a little bit more about the financial support that you mentioned that your group is able to provide to help with these practices? What's there available for farmers?
Well, like I say, I got to give a big shout out to DATCAP. DATCAP's been a tremendous help through all these programs. And at that point, too, in our lake associations, there are 3 different lakes, our Fox Lake, Beaver Dam Lake, and Lake Sinisippi. They've been very, very supportive. It's just amazing what we've accomplished in our county. And starting this group up, like I get back to our group, I wanted the whole county and not just the watershed, although we do come back to the watersheds and programs, but I've involved in watersheds over the years. I've always our farm's kind of in 2 different watersheds, so it always kind of left me out. So when I started the group up, I wanted to encompass our whole county. Everybody's important, every farmer in our county. But with the support of our lake association, it's just been phenomenal. We've been breaking down a lot of the barriers of the farmers and the finger pointing, and the amount of people we've met and the people I've met over the years been phenomenal. This whole group of farmer-led has been a huge initiative, and DATCAP's been very good supportive of this, and just the support we get throughout the state, from the DNR to any kind of organization out there, it's been phenomenal.
So Tony, the Dodge County group has seen a number of successes through the years, and we've kind of alluded to that in our conversation here, but can you share maybe an example of a challenge that your group has faced and actually successfully overcome since your formation?
Yeah, there's been some very hot finger pointing up at one of the lakes back and forth with a farmer and the lake people, and we're able to sit down and work with them and get some communication going. A lot of times it's just communication back and forth with farmers and lake people, or any type of person, city person or something that's pointing fingers at farmers, and understand, what we're doing. We're trying to protect our land and not pollute other people's properties or land with their runoff. So it's been a good experience.
So kind of going back to that networking and communication that you and I talked about earlier, I wanted to ask you, As you look out at what's going on in Dodge County, are you seeing more producers perhaps adopting conservation practices since the formation of Healthy Soil, Healthy Water? Has your group kind of been a catalyst to help spread that adoption rate in your area?
Yeah, it's going. It's slowly. It's starting to pick up now a little bit, but we're seeing more and more, and it's actually surprising. Once in a while, you'll see a farmer that you haven't talked to, and they've got some either cereal rye planted or something. And I think the more we can show it does work, and everybody's so skeptical of everything nowadays, and the more we can go and show and do the projects, like I say, get our countywide, every different farmers practicing these practices. And once you practice, and when another farmer says, I'm going to do this has been working so good for me, and there's no way I'm coming back and going to ever till my soil, it's a pretty big impact to a lot of the farmer groups that I've been talking to, and when he can stand up and say, I'm not going to go back and do tillage anymore.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel that people are more socially connected with each other because of maybe participation in, or even just because of the presence of the farmer group here?
Oh yeah, it's been a phenomenal out there. These other groups, we talk back and forth. Our state cover crop conference has been phenomenal. When we get close to 500 at on an annual event up there, and we can communicate. It's just been a super. I mean, everybody's doing this. It's been phenomenal. Like I say, the whole state movement. I think we've got one of the best movements in the United States right now. I think is in Wisconsin with the soil health.
All right, well, Tony, I have just a couple more questions here to wrap us up. And firstly, I want to ask you, what makes the Dodge County Farmers for Healthy Soil, Healthy Water unique from other groups?
Well, like I say, we've got a good participation. We didn't take the whole county. I felt, we got to have everybody participate. It's not one person's group. It's all of us. We're all in this together. We got good communications with our Lake Association people, Land Conservation, NRCS. Everybody's working together. It's making everybody's job easier for Land Conservation, NRCS. Now we're going to be instituting more of these cover crop practices, help the soil health and conservation side. And it's just been a phenomenal thing. If you can get it going and get this participation and have these events, put some events on, during the summer and with the help of DADCAP, we're able to use some funding, get some funding out there. I know the times are hard to get sponsorship now with the economy as bad as it is, but I really appreciate DADCAP and all their support financially to our groups.
All right, Tony, and finally, and I think this is a pretty important question to ask and a nice one to end on. It seems like with the producer-led watershed program, more and more of these groups just pop up every year. So, Tony, for those groups who are just starting out, or maybe even just individuals who want to start a group in their area, what advice would you give them? What are the things that people have to take into consideration when forming a farmer-led group?
Well, you need a couple key people that are willing to step up, and it takes a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in this, but I enjoy it. And if you can get a couple of farmers, I've got a good co-chair, and our whole group has been phenomenal. We've got such a good group in Dodge County. Everybody's willing to help and step up. I could just name on, but it's just the people. If you can get the group, it's gonna take a group of farmers to start a group. You got to get a few together that are willing to, as I've seen across, Wisconsin. All these groups have got a good core of people. It's just phenomenal how well they intertwine, they talk to each other, they work, and they come to these meetings and that. But it takes cooperation between a couple farmers, and then you can build on that. And then include everybody in there, and it's a fun time. It's enjoyable what we can do.
All right, Tony, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us your insights on Planting Green and on the Dodge County Farmers Group this afternoon. At this time, I'm going to pass things back to Rachel and Erica for maybe some questions and to wrap us up. So, ladies.
Yeah, and again, a sincere thank you to Tony and Jared. That was awesome, and I hope everyone learned a lot. We do have a couple minutes. If anyone has any last-minute burning questions that they want to get to Tony and Jared, you can feel free to type those in the chat. Reminder that we will be sending out a survey. So if you listened in on today's webinar and receive that link to a survey in your email, please take just a minute or two to fill it out. It will help us in the evaluation of these webinars and give us ideas for the future. There's a question, does the rye ever become a weed if you let it grow too long? And what is the best time to kill?
It could be, we don't grow much winter wheat, and I know there's been some people say, yeah, you gotta, be careful with that and that, although a lot of times it doesn't really seed out if you, kill it between, but usually the best time to be killing it is usually that, after you plant, when it's a foot or two tall, there's so much leaf area there, Roundup will kill it pretty easily. But the only time you would probably have a carryover, like if you'd let it go out to heading out and it would mature out, you'd have that seed out in the field. But as of now, you don't have too much trouble with it because you'll be killing it early enough.
Great. And then another question, are private agronomists part of the group as well?
Oh, yeah. We like to get more participation from co-ops and that around the area. They're slowly coming on board, but they feel that they're going to lose business. I don't know. We argue with that. We've been hiring private crop consultants for years, and you get independent opinion on it. But no, we got such a wide range of group. There's everybody and anybody in it, but they really like, it's been a really fun time in this soil health movement.
Yeah, it seems like one of the keys to success is a lot of diversity and partnerships. Another question that they might have missed in the beginning of the talk, are you bumping your pre-plant nitrogen when planting corn into cereal rye?
The nitrogen rate, no, we don't, we just put the extra on in front and then, put the rest on, but we don't bump the total usage of nitrogen up ever. It's just a matter of you're moving your nitrogen to at planting time rather than having it at side dressing time. So you just move your nitrogen around to the different areas. You don't add any extra nitrogen. You're just moving it.
Okay, and then what is your target planting date for the corn, and what day corn are you planting?
Well, like I say, everybody's trying to get it done as soon as they can. It's usually, we're trying to get done by the, it always was the 10th of May or whatever, you try to have it in. Everybody's, wherever you're at, is different, but sooner the better, you try to get it in. Although we've been going more with, now we're going to try to push the soybeans first and then go to the corn, because the soybean can take the colder temperatures. And like I say, in our group, we've got a couple members planting in soybeans early. One member has been doing it for 3 years. In March already starts planting beans. We're doing some research on that. So we've got a diversity in our group. A lot of guys are willing to do different stuff and see how this does go. But the maturity, we're backing down now, like the 103, 104 day max. Silage, maybe you can leave it up a little more, but you try to get your corn, the early day maturity, you can come in now and get a pretty decent yield and get it off earlier, and then get your cereal rye out there, and your benefits are going to start saving you money on fertilizer costs, and not really fertilizer, but just your early planting next year and having that cereal rye out there growing for you. So that plant's a long day and get the harvest off earlier.
Got it. So with that, I think we'll close out. I just want to also thank Tony and Jared for your time. You did an excellent job. There were lots of great questions, and so we really appreciate everybody's time today. The next webinar will be on May 12th, and that will be at noon also. So like I mentioned in the beginning, you might have missed it if you didn't get in right away, but all of our webinars now will be on the second Tuesday of the month at noon. So hopefully that's a bit easier to remember. If you did sign up for the webinar series, you're actually signed up for all of them. And Erica will be sending out reminders to those that have signed up. And then you'll also get, if there is an updated password for the Zoom webinar, you'll also get that in the email from Erica. So with that, I'll close us out, and just thanks so much, everybody, for your time. Have a great rest of the day.